I like to theme it.
Well, welcome everybody. It is the latest edition of Accademia Giallo for May 2024. I can't believe we're already in May. This is crazy. But yeah, we're going to be talking about a movie today that I was unaware of until it was brought to my attention, recommended that we discuss it on the show. I don't remember.
I think Blake mentioned it, and I heartily seconded it.
Okay.
Hardly.
No, heartily, I think.
Heartily.
Yeah, not hardly. I hardly recommended it. The movie up for discussion today is called Amsterdamned from 1988. And I have to say that I am upset, extremely bothered, because no one here on the panel prepared me for what was.
How could we?
It was a mind-blowing. It is instantly one of my top favorite films.
Yep.
Of all time. There is so much to talk about here. It's amazing, and I just don't feel like I was adequately prepared for what Amsterdam is.
If I could just throw something out there for the viewers tuning in, looking forward to a Giallo discussion. I've never I've watched this film so many times, and I love it, and it's great, and so many amazing things happen in it. But I don't know. I'm hard pressed to call it a Giallo.
You'd never seen it through the Giallo lens before.
Not really.
And still hasn't.
Well, it was recommended to be discussed on the show, so I assume that there are some folks on the panel who would discuss it in the context of Giallo. We can certainly do that today, because Brian, I totally see this as a Giallo film. Maybe we could start with that after we get through the introductions. Who are we? We are the Accademia Giallo faculty. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Blake Vaquera of Scored to Death. Now, I didn't tell anybody I was planning to do this, but I got something in the mail a little while ago. Ooh. I got this beautiful Scored to Death album, and I'm just going to reveal this. Which
available on CD.
Okay, there you go. But the vinyl rules as always. This is. Every album, I think, has a unique kind of color scheme to it, right? Well,
there's a lot of different colors. Yeah.
Let's see. You can't see. This is not. It's not a white album. It's not a Beatles album. But look,
black album.
I don't know if this will come out across, but it's this beautiful purple, like a deep purple album. My wife's favorite color, by the way. Now, all I have to do is get a record player to play it on.
My wife's favorite color as well.
We don't have the same wife, do we, Brian?
I mean.
We're never in the same room at once. No, but no. So yeah, congratulations on a hell of a record. I have to get a turntable on which to play it, but I mostly wanted to support it because I want to see the documentary that's coming out about it. And I understand you had a kick-ass signing at Dark Delicacies a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we signed a lot of books, sold out of books, almost sold out of records. Had 9 composers from the books and contributors to the record come out to sign with me.
That's
including
awesome.
Charles Bernstein, Chris Young, Harry Manfredini, Alan Howarth, Craig Saffin, Richard Band, Holly Amber Church, Joseph Bashar. Was a good time. The record was created as a Kickstarter kind of backer reward, but I have a lot of extra ones, so if anybody's interested, it's a compilation of horror movie themes kind of reimagined by a fantastic group of musicians, including Steve Moore from the band Zombie, Wojciech Golczewski, the band Anima Morte, Brooke and Will Blair, Voyager 3, a bunch of great musicians, including myself as a mediocre musician. And I'm selling them on Bandcamp. So check out Score to Death on Bandcamp. And they start shipping at the end of the week.
Awesome. Well, I will. It's not up now, but after the stream is over, because I don't want to take time to type stuff in, I will drop a link to that in the description so folks can definitely check that out. Cool, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. AC of Horror 101 with Dr. AC. I'm not going to pull over to pimp everything everybody's doing, because then we wouldn't get to talk about this amazing film Amsterdam. But I do want to say you alerted me to the fact that I feel like a horrible fan. But today is Peter Cushing's, what would have been Peter Cushing's birthday. I guess it's still his birthday, but he's not alive, so it's a memorial of the day of his birth. 111th. Wow.
Yep. Wow.
And in honor of that, I just dropped a link down below in the description before we started to a roundtable that we did on your podcast that went up earlier this week. It was a retrospective on all the Hammer Frankenstein films, or most of the Hammer Frankenstein films there, AC.
All of the Peter Cushing Hammer Frankenstein films.
Okay. All right. I'm still salty.
It was his birthday. It wasn't Ralph Bates' birthday. What am I supposed to say?
But no, yeah.
I thought you were gonna say in honor of that we're doing Amsterdam.
In honor of Peter Cushing's birthday?
Yeah. Oh no.
No, but you
there's got to be a connection there somewhere. I just haven't found it. I do have a Friday the 13th connection that I'm sure is going to thrill everybody.
Yes.
To Amsterdam. But anyway, go check that out. Brian Martinez of the
whose
Giallo
microphone
room.
is going crazy. Is that
My
you, Brian?
microphone?
I think so.
I'm gonna switch over because I have like my Bluetooth one.
Yeah, you sounded good a second ago, but now you're sounding like you're in a tin can.
Oh, you know what? It's probably, hold on 2 seconds. I'm sorry, it's so awkward. You could go over to this guy.
Kitley.
Yeah.
John Kitley. Kitley's Crypt. Hello, sir. How you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Brian, you could mute yourself.
Nah, why do that?
That's true. I don't know if he can hear us still. Oh, now it's like a slow-mo rotation. This is I'm feeling very Amsterdammed here. But I'm still hearing a little bit of weird.
Still got a squeaky mic.
Yeah.
I think we can mute yourself.
And the camera.
Yeah, you could do all of that. Anyway.
All right. Well, okay. So while he figures this out, live, we're going to talk about Amsterdam. Now, don't let me forget this, because I didn't realize that this would be a big deal until after I watched the film, but apparently there's a sequel in the works.
Yes.
36 or 37 years later. Is that true?
Yep. It is shooting right now in Amsterdam, and it's got a lot of the same cast and crew that are all back again. Hugh Stapel, who plays the lead in this one, he's kind of the Kurt Russell to Dick Maas's John Carpenter, because they've done like 6 or 7 projects together. And I think that the John Carpenter comparison is pretty relevant, because Dick Maas does compose his own music for his films, as well as writing, producing, and directing.
Dick
So
Maas.
it's Dick Maas. I was thinking it was Dickmas, which is my new favorite holiday. But anyway, I gotta say,
Maas means more in Spanish.
Yes.
Hey,
And he's not Spanish.
I know, but.
But hey, this is not necessarily a giallo, according to Brian. So we're just in all kind of funny territory here. But no, so I'm excited to see what they could do with a sequel. I mean, yeah, how old are these folks now? I mean, it's got to be a passing of the torch thing, right? Or is he still running around with that awesome hair and that wonderful jacket and that incredible speedboat, solving crimes in the canals?
And his weird relationship with his daughter.
What do you mean weird?
Yeah, it's fine.
That is the healthiest relationship I know.
Yeah.
They're like roomies. But okay, so I gotta ask, now that I've experienced, I didn't watch Amsterdam, but I experienced it. I was bowled over by it and transformed, I dare say.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this film not talked about more? Not just in giallo circles, not just in like horror or thriller circles, but in just like wider popular culture. This is like, I kept thinking Eric Visser, the character, the main character in this film, our detective, our hero. He reminds me of if Jean Reno thought that he was Marion Cabretti from Stallone's Cobra, but he lived in Amsterdam and solved crimes that would be this movie. It's amazing. You've got the crazy one-liners that are completely delivered deadpan.
Yep.
They're groaners, but they're, you forgive them because they're sophisticated groaners somehow. I've rarely seen a film that does escalation this well. A scene starts off being about one small incident and then grows to be something completely different. And in the case of this wonderful mid-film centerpiece involving a foot chase that becomes a speedboat chase, that becomes a chase through sewers. I mean, it just kept going and going and going in the same way that I was reminded of the opening of the Daniel Craig Casino Royale. I was not expecting that from this movie. Maybe, Brian, if I had to guess, that's why that kind of veering into the action subgenre steers it a bit more away from giallo for you. I don't know. We can get into that.
No, I mean,
but,
I feel
I had
like
not
it's
experienced anything like this before.
I feel like it's more slasher than Giallo. Like Giallo to me, like I don't know, because I was listening to John's podcast, Discover the Horror, and they mentioned that I'm a stickler for like categorizing what a true Giallo is and what's not a true Giallo. Whatever.
Were they gossiping about you on the podcast? Is that what I'm?
Well, gossip is the right word.
But so I'm not trying to be a stickler or whatever, but I don't know. Like I said, I love this movie. I just don't think it's a like when people say, "Oh, like why is Phenomena not a Giallo?" or "Why is Stage Fright not a Giallo?" Like I can jump into the conversation with that, But with this one, it's like I don't know. Like I think this leans like it's a Dutch film. Doesn't necessarily have a good soundtrack. It doesn't have.
Whoa.
No, I'm saying like in terms of like comparing it to Giallo, like it's not the most memorable soundtrack or whatever.
That final song, are you kidding me?
But it's more 80s. It's more 80s action slasher. Like I don't know. I think it's more akin to that stuff. Like in terms of Giallo, I don't know. Like I don't know. We could get into it. But.
I got an idea. Why don't you just keep saying it's not Giallo, and that'll be your evidence. It's just not Giallo. It is just not Giallo.
Well, let's open this up. Are there other folks on the panel who agree with Brian, or do you have some points as to why this is a Giallo? It doesn't strike me as in the same category as other Gialli we've talked about, but I also don't see it as not being Giallo myself. But I'm curious to see what the counter argument would be. To Brian.
Blake, you suggested it, so I'm curious to hear.
Well, I just think it's I find watching non-Italian movies that kind of play in the same sandbox interesting. Something like Frenzy. I don't know if Dick Maas had the intention of making something that was Giallo-esque, but I think just by nature of it not being Italian, can pull it away from that. But I felt like, and watching it this time, it kind of seems kind of less Giallo-esque to me than maybe I felt the first time I saw it a couple years ago. But it just, there's discussions like, well, what is Giallo? And if you're, and it's gonna mean something different to everybody. It has some really cool set pieces. It's a little bit of a whodunit. In this case, the detective is a detective and not like an amateur detective, which is kind of a staple of a lot of the Giallo films. I just thought it could be something. I'm always looking for what are the Giallo-esque movies that aren't Italian? And to me, you can see it in a like Halloween 3 has a lot of like Giallo-esque qualities to me. It's an amateur detective trying to get to the bottom of this like mystery of what's going on with this murder that happens at the beginning of the movie. Turns out it's bizarre. That was kind of where I was coming from. When we were having a discussion about like, here's the list of movies we've put on the list of things to cover. And I just said, well, if you guys are looking for anything that's not Italian, here are potentially some interesting discussions that could be had. His first movie, Lift, actually is more stylistically in sync with giallo, with like what we think of like an Argento giallo with colors and more interesting visuals and stuff. But I just thought this was a very cool movie that I thought could be an interesting discussion through this lens.
You don't have to sound so apologetic about it. I'm glad you recommended it because, again, I am a different person today than when I was 24 hours ago. So that there's something to be said for that. But it's interesting because let me ask you this, Brian. If this had been set in Italy, it would have made the canal thing a little bit awkward. But if it had been set in Italy, do you think that would have given it more credence as far as being?
You could do it in Venice, right?
Exactly.
Like I don't know. I think
True.
I think it's not a giallo. There you go.
Fair enough.
No,
you say it one more time and Beetlejuice will manifest.
Exhibit Z, still not a giallo.
I like in terms of discussing it on Accademia Giallo, I think it's a good discussion because it's like what constitutes a giallo? Why is this not a giallo, right? And like so there's no real red herrings, right? Like other than like, oh, it's a sea monster that jumps out and kills people or whatever. There's no real money plot. There's no like I don't know. I think in the 80s, I think this came out 88.
88.
Yeah. So like I think it's more akin to maybe Dick Maas was kind of knee deep in slashers by then, and he wanted to do something because okay, here's my kind of connection to giallo. Like I see this more as like a New York Ripper kind of style, kind of movie, and that movie like is also in the discussion of like, is this a giallo or is this a slasher? Proto slasher.
It was a discussion that was had on this show. Yes.
Yeah. So I would say like that's probably the biggest link to that, but New York Ripper was made by Fulci, so that's the Italian connection. For this one, I don't know. I just don't see it as like when I think of giallo, when I think of Amsterdam, I don't think of the same things. You know what I mean? Like, it's a great film. It's fun. I love it. I'm not taking anything away from it. I just don't think it's a giallo film.
So if the director's name had been Dick Maas, then it would have been Masiccioli. There you go.
Masiccioli.
I'm going to make some of that later tonight. Some Dick Masiccioli. Wait, no, I'm not.
But you compared this to like almost because you said he reminds you of Jean Reno. Like I almost watching this again, I almost felt like this is sort of like a professional type movie. You know what I mean? Like I get lots of that movie to me feels more like Luc Besson watched Amsterdam and was like, oh, let me do something with like a weird male-female relationship, but like he's also doing, I don't know, like this movie has a lot going for it, and I'm so happy that like 30 years later or whatever it is, they're doing a sequel to it. But again, like it's not a giallo.
AC, why is this a giallo?
Well, actually, I feel like John hasn't said anything yet, so I want to make sure that he gets his moment.
You raised your eyebrow when Brian suggested there weren't any red herrings, as did I, but I think a bit more subtly than you did.
There's a few red herrings, but that being said, God, I hate to do this, especially it's going to be committed to the afterlife. I do agree with Brian. If you were writing a book
so
on
hard, John.
My hands are shaking. No, if you were writing a book on giallo, if there was a chapter on sub genre of giallos, this would totally be included. But I do understand Brian's point that it doesn't have the feel of a giallo, even though it has a mystery. He sets you up in the beginning that it's a monster movie,
right?
And then when you realize it's not, then I do think there are a few red herrings, or at least one. And there is a stalking, but it doesn't have that feel. of a giallo. It has some of the elements, so I think it would be included as a subgenre. But I don't think it has, and whether or not it's Italian or American or whatever country it comes from, it just doesn't have that. For me, it didn't have that feel. It is more, it does have the mystery, does borderline on slasher, because, you know, slashers usually have the mystery as well. But if I was going to put it in one of those two categories, it would be more slasher than a giallo.
Like, it does have the POV, right? Like that aspect.
So do slashers.
Right, true.
Well, I would say that this doesn't feel like a slasher either. Like, that's what I kind of love about it, is that it doesn't feel like anything other than what it is. It feels like it's an amalgam of a lot of different elements. Yeah. It's a comedy. It's an action film. It is a murder mystery, whether it falls on the giallo side or the slasher side. And I'd never seen anything like it before.
I will give it that, because I never watched this when it first came out, because I read that it's not a monster movie. And I'm like, oh, screw that noise. So I can't even tell you when the first time I had seen it, but it wasn't upon its initial release.
Right. For
that reason. So, I mean, yeah, it does set it up for something that it's not, but that's actually watching it now. Yeah. You got to kind of give it a nod to it, going, okay, that was pretty slick.
Yeah. Fun misdirection, like every turn of the corner.
Plus the fact that just the concept that you have a guy in snorkel gear and scuba, that is amazing. I mean, it's one of those things that,
and it totally works.
Exactly. You're trying to think of, well, let's do something different. Well, how about the guys in scuba gear? And you're going, what? Like, nobody's going to hear him flop, 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 sneaking up on you?
That first shot of him, like, stabbing the hooker to death, like, in the beginning, is
man,
because you see, like, his scuba gear, like, in the distance or whatever. And he looks like monster-esque, but if you know what it is, it's like, it's just some guy in a scuba outfit stabbing.
Well, and that opening set piece with the prostitute being, like, dragged across the boat with all the kids inside, I'm like, I was in like so hard. 10 minutes in, I'm just like, yup, whatever you got, bring it on.
I do agree that the kind of the setup for, or the sales pitch for this, is a bit weird, because when I first heard the title Amsterdamned, I assumed it sounds more like a zombie movie, like damned creatures walking around or something like that. But I think, you know, I feel like it's more to do with the poppy bubblegum song that plays at the end.
So good.
They're like, hey, let's just name this movie Amsterdam. But yeah, I the monster angle, I don't know, I'm kind of surprised that you guys got caught up on that, because it didn't really occur to me that this was being set up as a monster film. I think the lady at the dock who saw the prostitute get killed had said it was a monster or something like that, but I don't know that people really took it seriously. I mean, we see from the
trailer. You watch the original trailer, and it totally sets it up that there's something living in the water.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's not misdirection, because he was living.
It's not. But watch the trailer, because it totally sets it up that there's something lurking in the water.
But there was something lurking in the water.
You didn't lie to me, but you kind of lied to me.
Yeah, in fairness, I have not watched the trailer, so yes, I'll go back and check that out. Not right now, of course, because we're live. And speaking of which, we have comments, and you know, with the number of comments that we have, I can't afford to just do everything at the end.
I was excited for the comments, because I want to hear, like, what people think about this film in terms of it being a giallo or not. You know?
Are you sure? No. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mrs. Chester, I'd love to see you do The Whip and the Body, an S&M ghost story with Christopher Lee and an amazing lighting by Mario Bava. Any takers? I've not heard of this.
It's great Italian horror. I don't know that it's giallo, but
yeah, I would love to cover that, but it's
it's a great movie.
Yeah,
okay, well, we'll have to pencil that in as a special side lesson or something like that. Yeah. Good evening, says Jonas Hallberg. Good evening. Yes. I like the movie. Have the Shameless DVD.
Yep.
Shameless.
I was going to say that wasn't that William H. Macy TV show from Showtime. Anyway, Slasher Fred. This movie kind of feels like it was inspired by the novel Red Dragon because it involves a cop on the hunt for a serial killer. Interesting. That was one of the Hannibal Lecter series, wasn't it? By
that was
Thomas
the first.
Harris. Okay. Let's see. Hi, gents. Never seen this. Yeah, Swifty, of course. He was aware of it. Need to ASD it to my endless list. Add, yes. I go by Troy's definition of giallo. Okay. Good point, Brian. Is New York Ripper a giallo? Love it to death, but always ask the same question. Scuba gear, flippers, and hooker killings. Yes. Oh my.
Big Swifty, you shouldn't be watching this right now. You should watch this later. You got to go watch Amsterdam.
Well, listen, I agree because it's best to not be spoiled by it. But there's nothing that can prepare you, even if you have all the spoilers in the world, from just appreciating what this movie is. I mean, is it okay? It's Hub Staple. Is that the guy's
Staple,
name?
Yeah. Or
Okay.
Stapel, I'm not sure which.
All right. It is Stapel's show for sure. He's not a hard-boiled detective. He seems kind of like easygoing. I don't know what his like how you would categorize him in terms of detectives that we've talked about or in any other genre, except for I keep going back to Cobra, but he's even more kind of subdued than that.
Yeah, laconic is the word that came to mind.
I don't know. Well, laconic kind of implies that he's almost like comatose or something. Like he's got forward momentum. It feels like this is like his 90th canal killer or something like that. He's unfazed by anything, which
he's so old, right? Like he's just.
Which listen,
is why I'm so excited for the sequel because like it's the same dude. So
he's even more chill. 30 years later, he's like, okay, now I really have seen everything.
Right.
It's the 1000th canal killer. All right. I want to take a moment to appreciate the economy of storytelling in this movie because you don't get a big monologue. You don't get other cops talking about this guy. What you do get is he's on his way to the crime scene with the hooker that has been discovered dangling off of a bridge, whose bloody corpse has been run under by a tour bus featuring nuns, school children, and very frightened mothers.
The nuns with the flying things too.
Yep.
Yes. Awesome. Only thing that would have been better is if it had been kind of an open top and they got like drenched in blood. That would have been fun. But he's on his way. He's driving and he gets stuck in traffic. And right as he's stuck in traffic right next to a bakery, and that bakery is being held up at knife point. He jumps out of his car, goes in, foils the bakery, smashes the guy's face into a cake, and then the owner gives him grief about like, oh, that was a great cake and all the ingredients. So we use the freshest ingredients. What are you doing? No, thank you. And in sight, and he gets back in his car, and right as he does, hey, the traffic's cleared up. It reminds me of the Tommy Wiseau scene from the Room, where he goes into that flower shop for all of 10 seconds and just leaves, and it's like, what is this scene there for? In this case, it's to establish what a badass our Mr. Eric Visser is.
I think it's very Dirty Harry-esque, actually.
It is, but also with that rockin' 80s, not quite mullet and that jacket. It's like 90% of it is the aesthetic, 10% attitude.
I wanted the jacket to have some fringe on it, or something.
Or like a cool like painting on the back of it or something. I don't know.
Well, it also could show an insight or an implication of what the society feels about the police too.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't mention the assailant like licking the icing when his face was in the cake.
I totally would have done that.
I'd have been eating it really good. Maybe that's why the owner was so upset. Right? Yeah.
That's not Java.
Oh, his face is in the cake. Totally Java there.
By the way, before we like go, because like we totally glossed over the scene in the very beginning. I think it's Jesus Christ. Sorry.
We already talked about the nuns, but he's not in this movie.
But the scene where like I think it's the opening credits where he goes into the place where the Asian people are cooking or whatever.
Yep.
And he totally sneaks in with all the scuba gear, right? And it's not like the cooks are like going into the next room or whatever. They're right there. They just kind of turn their head a little bit, and then the knife is gone, which I love. It's very like Michael Myers-esque or whatever. But come on, man! Like you can't hear like the sloshing of the flippers and the banging of the air tanks or whatever. You know.
See,
he's that good, Brian.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And what I think and what I love about Dick Maas's sensibility as a filmmaker is that he has a great sense of humor. I mean, he knew when he was making The Lift, he's like, it's a killer elevator. And like you inherently go, that's a joke. That's a punchline. And I'm going to take that punchline. I'm going to make an actual movie out of it. And I feel like the same thing is true here. Like he takes all these elements, like, you know, the kind of the breathiness that we hear like an Ennio Morricone score. And he turns that into the scuba breathing. And that's part of the musical landscape. It's like he knows what he's doing. He's very much steeped in love of genre, and he's incorporating it through his particular sensibility. I just love that. Like the thing is, he's just having a good time, and he just wants the audience to have a good time in the same way that like you came to this murder mystery, not to really get scared. You came to have fun. And that's why he throws a boat chase in there. That's why he throws car chases in there. That's why he throws just random comedy bits in the middle of his car chase in there.
That's actually a great point.
Well, and to that point, I think, AC, Brian, I understand what you're saying, but it didn't occur to me that whole setup of like him getting up out of the water and going into this kitchen and kind of skulking around and not being noticed until you brought it up. That is what I would call a parking lot conversation. Like you've just gotten out of a movie and you're walking out with your friends like, wasn't that amazing? And your one friend, probably me, says, yeah, but what about that thing? And you're like, oh, that's right. That was kind of dumb. But you don't even think about it in the moment or even necessarily afterwards.
That's
because
great,
in terms of
normally you do think of that stuff.
Yeah, I know what's going on. It's the Dick Maas magic. But but no, I mean, that's the other thing, though, is it totally works because up until like later on in the film, you don't see what this guy is. He is, you know, they make allusions to, oh, we found the diving meter and he's probably a diver in scuba gear and all this stuff, but we don't really see him in action until I don't think the underwater boat scene, the Jaws homage, where the detective, the cop partner is gone down to look, find out what he can in this sunken boat, and the corpse of the guy who owned the boat kind of brushes up against him. But oh, the serial killer is actually in the boat, pops out of a room and attacks him. I think that's our first good look at the killer, right? If you stop and think about it, you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. This guy was like, weaving and bobbing around a kitchen a half hour ago. How does that work? It doesn't, but in the moment it totally does. Can we just talk about that scene though? Because I had talked about escalation and the boat chase that led to the foot chase through the sewers. But it started, I was going to say it started with that boat, the attack inside the boat, which led to the chase. But it even started before that with the guy who owned the boat at night during this rainstorm. The killer kind of cuts the main ropes and causes it to go out to sea or, into the canal. But even you go back further because what was happening, our Eric Visser was having like amazing sex with his, would-be girlfriend. And you can probably take it past that to the dinner and whatever was going on before there. It's almost like the world's longest scene. Or as to quote Back to School, it's one question in 27 parts. But yeah, I was not ready to experience this degree of sophisticated storytelling and filmmaking in what I thought was going to be a poorly named run-of-the-mill Giallo story. And then
his point, like it's Dick Maas knows exactly what he's doing. Like it's like, I've read reviews of this movie and they say that like, oh, it should be 15 minutes shorter or whatever. Because it was like real close to 2 hours,
Right.
So, but I didn't bump into that at all. I felt like it's very good storytelling. It's very good filmmaking. The action or the stunt coordinator of this movie went on, I think his name's Dickie Beer or something like that. Went on
to do dicks in this movie.
What's that?
There's a lot of dicks in this movie.
There's More dicks. Yeah.
There's the quote for the
Dick
show.
Maas.
Well, no, you watch it, like the
Maas
opening credits, and it's like it's like that scene from Reservoir Dogs. Dick, 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 dick. Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, so that the stunt coordinator went on to do like multiple big budget Hollywood movies, and he's actually still working today. I think he did something for a really like I forget the name of it, but it's like a really recent big budget movie that just came out not too long ago. But like this movie, I feel like to your point, Ian, earlier, I don't know why more people don't talk about this film. It's steeped in so many great Giallo-esque, not Giallo, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Typo.
A verbal typo. I love it.
Yeah. Just genre-esque, like from action to slasher. It's got like really cool horror elements. It's got really cool just dramatic stuff in it, and it's like all done in tongue in cheek. Like I think he's just a filmmaker and a storyteller that knows exactly what he's doing.
I think part of it is the name. I think the name can
Dick
be a
Maas.
little, well, not that name, but the other name, Amsterdamned. I think the title can be a little off-putting because it seems silly, and then you hear what the premise is, and you're like, not for me, not today. And that was kind of the reason why I hadn't checked it out. I mean, I'd heard of it before, and it wasn't until I was doing the Scare-a-thon and I was trying to pick a different country for each day of October. And so here was the Netherlands. I went, okay, I can finally check this off. And that by then I went, oh, it's Dick Maas. I actually like his stuff, so I'll give it a try. And it was absolutely one of the big surprises of that October. I was like,
and that was recent for you, I see.
2021. I hadn't seen it prior to that.
Wow. Okay.
What would a better title of this film been? Diver, like Diever.
Diver.
Yeah.
I just love when you see a non-American filmmaker that clearly just loves American cinema. I mean, when he made this movie, it was like the most expensive movie ever made in like the Netherlands, when it was still only like $2 million.
Right.
But it was like when Ryu Kitamura did like Versus. Like he's like, this is my first movie. I'm gonna put every movie I want to make into one movie. And this isn't Dick Maas's first movie. I mean, he's coming off of I think like the biggest hit in like Amsterdam, in the Netherlands history, comedy called Flatter, I think.
Yeah, Flatter, and like there was 2 other Flatter movies. Yeah, he was riding high.
TV series and like crazy. But I mean, so like coming off of that, he could have done anything he wanted there, but he decides to make Amsterdam because I don't, I think, he's obviously made a name for himself in horror, but I don't think if I had to wager to guess, I would say he probably doesn't think of himself as a horror filmmaker. I think he is a guy that wants to do like everything he can in a country that doesn't have a humongous film industry. The stunt guys that Brian's talking about, they had to bring those guys in from England because there was no like stunt industry in the Netherlands at the time. And so I think you get like this fantastic mashup that we've all been kind of talking about, which is like, it's a horror movie, it's a slasher movie, it's an action movie, it's a police procedural. I love when you get these filmmakers who are kind of have their hands tied behind their backs, concerning like from where they're located in a country that doesn't really have a prospering film industry, and they just go for it. I mean, I think coming off of Flatter and the success of that, I think it was mostly funded by like Canon and Vestron. So I mean, a lot of the money was not coming from the Netherlands, I don't think. But this guy, is one of the most successful filmmakers in that country of all time.
Yeah. Him and Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah, well, I mean, and he doesn't go the route of his fellow countrymen filmmakers and like go to Hollywood. I mean, he does do a couple of American things. He does like a remake of The Lift, kind of as an American film, and he does a bunch of episodes of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Right.
But he kind of, I love that he has this interest, and he goes and he swings for the fences in like what he's interested in.
Yeah.
And that it is like part Jaws, part Dirty Harry, part slasher
Lethal Weapon,
movie, 100% Giallo movie.
Well, it is kind of it's refreshing to see. I agree with everything you said there, Blake, but it felt like, and I wasn't inside of his head, of course, but it felt like Dick Maas was thinking, how can I make this a movie that the audience is going to be entertained by, surprised by? You're not going to be able to turn off your brain. It's not the smartest movie in the world, but it is perhaps one of the most unexpected. I keep going back to this damn boat chase because when Eric takes off after the diver, who the cops think they've cornered the killer diver in one of the locks. It turns out it was a misdirect with one of the breathing apparatuses. Eric catches the guy getting into a boat, so he gets into a boat, and they begins this chase, and the chase goes on and on and on. It goes on for quite a while, but it's not boring at all. They are taking these sharp turns. There's this incredible ramp jump over a street that I don't know how they didn't do this with CGI. I mean, it looked when there and Swifty, I really hope that I love you, but I hope you've tuned out because there are some things that I'm going to spoil here. But oh my God. Okay. Eric gets flipped over the back of the boat that he's driving. And this is where it gets a little bit Bugs Bunny to me, because I'm like, I'm pretty sure that the amount of time it took him to get back in the driver's seat, it would have veered off into a wall. But I bought it. He's hanging on to the back of this boat, not getting ripped to pieces by the motor somehow. Because all I know about motorboats, I learned from Friday the 13th, Jason Lives. But he gets back on the boat, continues his pursuit, and you think the killer's gotten away, but he flies right into a fuel boat, and then it just spectacular explosion. And Eric Cobretti, as I'll call him from now on, he looks back and he sees a figure somehow implausibly like hanging out or entering this giant sewer grate. So like our main villain is not dead, because that was my first thought was, okay, the movie still has like another half hour to go and you've just killed the killer. What the hell? But it turns out no. And then you get this spectacular shot of shooting upwards, the bullet cracking the spider glassing the goggles on the diver's helmet. I can't speak highly enough of this, and it's so rare that I get surprised by a movie. It's so rare that I get surprised several times while watching a movie. And AC, you mentioned this movie is funny. There's an exchange between Eric and his daughter. She says, "What's for dinner?" And he says, "Brains in broccoli sauce." And she says, "I hate French food." Or I hate French cooking. Like, what is this movie?
Yep.
Besides amazing.
So good.
And
by the way, wait, what?
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, if a couple of things to Blake's point, I think Maas I would not consider him a genre director, but I consider him as a filmmaker, because he got started filming music videos for Golden Earring.
Yep.
And that got his foot in the door. And then, he's been in a ton of different genres, and I think he works in all of them. Had this film been set in San Francisco, that boat chase would have been no different than how many cop movies going up the hills and down the hills in San Francisco that go on and on and on, with characters maybe falling in the back seat of the car. It's identical to what American filmmaking would have expected in a car chase in like I said, in San Francisco. So I think that's perfect that he took that in his home turf and made it fit Amsterdam. I think that was a brilliant move on his part, and it's pretty damn thrilling.
Well, one of the things I noted was, like, in the same way that this film gives such a sense of place to Amsterdam, it is akin to, like you said, Bullet or Invasion of the Body Snatchers in San Francisco, where you get such a sense of place Or 28 days later, like in London, it's like, this is London. If you know London, you recognize it. And I feel like that's the same thing is true here in Amsterdam. Like, even if you don't know Amsterdam, it feels like a travelogue. It almost starts off like a travelogue.
Yeah.
And then you get to see all these different sides of it. And by the end of it, you feel like I've really been to Amsterdam and I've seen it through, a perfect tour guide's tutelage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about, I think the San Francisco car chase cliche, it's a great one to note, but I think in bringing it to Amsterdam, one thing he accomplishes is it's still unreal to me that you can pull that off with these machines that are 2 to 3 times as big as an automobile, at least in terms of length.
Right.
Because I still don't know how some of these boats made these sharp turns. The stunt work is just it's phenomenal.
I don't know. Look at those cars in the 70s. Those were boats.
Those are boats.
Yeah.
Speaking
Fair enough.
to like how thrilling the boat chase was, like I think it's in one of the trivia things on IMDb or whatever, but like I think it took so for every 11 seconds of that boat scene, it took like 3 weeks of like planning and staging and actual boat chasing and all that stuff. So like you film that for like 3 weeks or a month or whatever, and it's like it equates to like 11 seconds of the actual footage that you see like on screen.
That's a 5-minute boat chase, because I was clocking it this time. I was like, this thing just keeps going, and I love that it goes up onto the sidewalk, where the chairs are, and it comes back down again. It flies over things, and people catch it. It's so good. When I first saw it, I was like, this is like a James Bond equivalent, and it's made on like a fraction of that budget. It's just it's such an achievement.
It's funny you say that, because I think the stunt coordinator worked on A View to a Kill, which has like that car chase scene or whatever, that like the car rips in half and it still keeps going or whatever. I think that's View to a Kill.
The scene that AC is talking about where the boat comes out of the water, I think they actually had to shoot that somewhere else, because like businesses and stuff aren't that close to the water in Amsterdam. So they were like,
for that reason.
The boats are always flying out of the water.
But yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, a lot of the stunt team, all the stuntmen and everything came from England. So I think a lot of those guys probably worked on the Bond.
We're Bond people, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we solved the mystery here, though. Brian, you said for every 11 seconds, it took 3 weeks of filming. Maybe they started in the sequel to they started Amsterdam 2 actually in 1989,
Right.
and they wanted to do 5 boat chases in the sequel, so it's just coming out next year.
I just wonder what that sequel is going to look like now that you have everything you could ever ask for in terms of just special effects and just what you could do these days or whatever.
You go by whatever his last movie was with the lion.
Yeah, the CGI was not great, not great.
The video quality is not that great either.
Yeah.
I would hope that the people who are making Amsterdam 2 understand they're kind of old school fans or people who are discovering it now and appreciate it for what it was and would go the more practical route. Because I mean, hell, the underwater stabbing scene that I mentioned, where the killer comes out of the room and attacks the other detective and they pull his body up. I'm always fascinated by the way water works with stab wounds, because usually on a land-based kill, you'll have like stuff falling out or blood everywhere. These are just like these little slits with a little bit of blood because the water is kind of washing over it. It's eerie. It's like watching a paper cut on film, but there's so much restraint in this movie, unlike some other gialli / more slasher-esque gialli that we've talked about. The one scene I wanted to mention, there was a kill involving 2 people. They were like surveyors out on a boat at night. One gets decapitated under the water. The other gets dumped out of the boat, swims to shore. And this is where the kind of creep show 2 of The Raft I was reminded of, because he gets up to shore. His legs are still pretty much in the water, but he waves to these people who are driving by. The one guy stops and said, "Hey, there's someone over there who needs my help." And the other guy's, "I didn't see him." One guy's like, "Oh, I did. I'm going to go help him." By the time he gets there, our poor seafarer has been dragged into the water, almost like a cross between the monster from the raft and the xenomorph from like the first Alien, just like, and there's no trace of them until the body's found later. Yeah, this movie it's cool, it's eerie, and it does, even though it is a flesh and blood person, it still frames a lot of the kills as if it were a monster that other people were talking about. Maybe I need to watch that trailer again, or for the first time.
One thing I wanted to mention is that, well, not only do we have a really great cast, Monique van de Ven starred opposite Rutger Hauer in Turkish Delight, the one who plays Laura, the love interest, the museum guide. But most of the voice dubbing was done by the original cast. Like they all went in and recorded their lines in English, which is why they all have that great Dutch accent, which I think just kind of like lends a little bit more authenticity to it as well. It doesn't feel like somebody's talking with an American accent. Like they talk like they are speaking English with Dutch accents in Amsterdam. It just kind of all lends a sense of atmosphere to it.
Yeah,
I mean, also, sorry, the Monique van der Ven was also in The Johnsons, another film from another Dutch film, Rudolph Vanderwerk. It's not a giallo, not even close, but it is a highly underrated film. She stars in it.
Yeah, oh man, I hadn't even made that connection.
Okay,
did Dick Maas direct the Johnsons?
No, it was Rudolph Vanderberg.
Although I did just make this gesture, and I can't believe it. Nobody has talked about the fact that this is a giallo because it takes the black gloved killer to the extreme in that it's black glove over the entire body.
Body glove. There you go, Brian. What do you think about that?
It's not a giallo.
Most giallo.
I got to talk about the lady sunning herself on the raft.
Okay.
Such a weird scene. She's out, there have been murders happening on the canal. Maybe she thought, well, it's daytime, no one's going to attack me here. But she's hanging out in the bikini, and we see the killer, his face kind of float up underneath the raft, and then we see the blade come up and then turn, and then now we don't see anything, but we don't have to. We can imagine it. But what stuck with me the most, and I didn't time this, but I'm pretty sure my 10 seconds estimation will hold up in court. She gives this great scream as she's being butchered, which we don't see it, but we cut to the next scene, which I believe is the police officers walking into that to meet the mayor or whoever, something like that, somebody officious. The echo of that scream lasts for about 10 seconds into the next. It's this very subtle reverberation that just stays with what's going on to the next scene. And it's such a weird moment that it felt very like artsy to me. Like, why is this in here? Why this particular moment? I don't know that it has a reason, but I hadn't really experienced that before in another horror movie. I've heard screams that lead to other things, but just to have it, shadow whatever is happening next, I thought was completely original and cool. Want to catch up on some comments here. Just a couple more from Big Swifty and nuns too. Okay, I'm in. Yeah. I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. But which I think was from what is it? Not Dark Side, the movie. Tales from the Dark Side, yeah. The girl in room 2A for the next. One of my favorites, 100% Giallo. Love this channel. Well, we love you too, Big Swifty. What about the girl in room 2A, gang?
I've not seen it.
That's the one with the guy that dresses in red, like the cult thing, right?
I don't know. And AC hasn't seen it. And Blake or Kitley, have you seen it?
If I have, I don't remember it.
Ooh, okay. We might have to discuss this. It's been requested. Many of us haven't seen it, and according to you, Swifty, I'm going to hold you to this. It's 100% Giallo. No doubt. But, so is Amsterdam. So, can we talk about, and Swifty, please go away. I love you, but we're going to talk about the end of this movie.
It's from 1974, Girl in Room 2A.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, the end of this film, again, something that I don't think I've remembered or seen before. This can't have been the first time I've encountered, but maybe it was. We've got the scene where our heroine, blanking on her name again,
Laura.
I keep wanting to say Lauren. She discovers what she thinks is the killer's identity, and it is Martin, her psychiatrist / the guy who's interested in her, but she's more interested in Eric, so that kind of causes a weird triangle of sorts. She discovers some equipment in his attic / basement. I don't know where the hell he was, but she's hiding out in his office, and he's just around the corner. And she's afraid. She calls into the hospital where Eric has been admitted after being attacked by the killer. The nurse says something about, she says, "One moment, my pen stopped working." And then the call cut out. Eric rushes to find her. There's a pursuit, but she ends up attacking Martin with a giant oar, I believe. And she beats the hell out of him. And he falls down. And she does the thing that I wish all heroines did in all horror movies. He gets up and she beats the crap out of him again. She doesn't like throw away her weapon or anything.
She does eventually throw it away, though.
Right, but I think at that point, hadn't Eric and other people showed up? Because he was down for the count, and then the real killer kind of pops up in the water, I think, right? And then that's when they realize that, oh, it wasn't him, it was someone else. And that's the great awkward moment of he gets up, he's got this giant welt in his head and scratches on his face, and it's like, oh, sorry. But again, just as I thought the killer had been blown up in a boat explosion 20 minutes earlier, and now I'm wondering, okay, if it wasn't Martin, who the hell was it? Now we do get a bit of the Norman Bates exposition dump at the end of Psycho as our doctor is driving to catch up with the real killer. Turns out this does, I think, violate Roger Ebert's law of the economy of characters, which is in any horror movie or mystery, the killer is going to be someone in the cast. They don't just get randomly introduced at the end of the movie. Right. The killer gets randomly introduced at the end of this movie. It was a patient of the doctor who we've never heard of, never been mentioned, never even been hinted at.
He's mentioned earlier in the movie.
When? Okay, now granted, I only saw this once.
Dive anymore.
Right.
But wasn't that okay? So yeah, he tells one story to Eric Cobretti and another story to Laura, and that's when there's kind of that suspicion of he's giving contradictory accounts of why he stopped diving. Was that so that incident was one of them, right?
It's a red herring.
He talks about how he had a friend who had like some kind of accident or something. I don't remember the exact details,
okay,
but it is mentioned.
It is mentioned. But there's an asterisk to that mention, because the truth of it is there was a guy who had an accident involving a bunch of uranium he was exposed to, right? And then, but so it wasn't, when I think, oh, there was a diving accident, like, oh, my friend like got caught in a rudder or got speared through the shoulder or something, and then, stopped diving. This was a completely like different situation. So I will give you that point, but I'll also say it's just skirting the law.
There's a few Giallos that the killers are nobody in the cast.
Yeah, they just show up at the end. They're like, oh, it's you.
Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward, the killer's technically incoherent. I mean, doesn't have anything to do with the real plot. It's a side plot. So, I mean, that's not unheard of not to have the killer part of the main cast.
I'm just quoting Roger Ebert and it's in a book, a hardbound book of laws, movie rules. So I guess he didn't account for Giallo. So fair enough, John.
You never account for Giallo. It's hard. It's hard to
do. But no. So as I mentioned, there was a guy who was exposed to uranium and he was like horribly disfigured, and so he wants to take revenge against society, which is a very kind of interesting point and underscores why the kills in this movie are so random. I mean, even when they pull up pictures, like the old black and white photos of what this person used to look like, and he was hanging out with the doctor and some other people, that's the moment in all of these movies where you find the photographs like, oh, all the people who are in this photo had a connection to the killer, and that's why they're all being picked off. No, this is truly random attacks throughout Amsterdam. I love that aspect of it. I also love the fact that there's no giant showdown with the killer. The guy, now, here's where I need some help. Was it because he realized that he was being cornered and the authorities were probably on their way to his house/boat, whatever, his houseboat, that he just knew there was no point in going on. And that's why he, again, spoiler alert, Swifty.
It's your spoiler banner.
I'm going to spoil it. I should have put up the spoiler banner. Damn it. Too much to think about. Hey, how about this? Wait.
We've been very open about the fact that we were talking details. So.
That's true. But yeah, why did he kill himself? Shot himself through the throat/head.
Well, hadn't he been shot? Didn't Eric shoot him when he was when he burst in to save Laura?
Did he hit him though?
I don't know.
He was in the water.
I mean, I got the sense that it was that kind of, I'm coming to the end and I'm going to go out under my own terms and not anybody else's.
And I also like the fact that when the killer finally takes off his mask and we see the disfigurement, it's not like horror movie disfigurement, like wait for it, Jason Voorhees. It looks like a guy who had some kind of an accident. It's very sad, and you understand. Nothing justifies what he's been doing for the entire movie, but you can see this, guy who's was driven insane by circumstances beyond his control. Now, I do have to say, we cut immediately from them discovering his body and well, I guess that's it, to sunny days in the canal with Eric and Laura on these paddle boats, talking about the future, making plans, and then he gives a great Friday the 13th style fake out of something's grabbed me from the water, and instead of slapping the crap out of him, because I'm sure she is plenty traumatized by what she's been through, they laugh, and then the camera it's great aerial shots, and that awesome Amsterdam pop song comes on. What is this film?
Yep, it's awesome is what it is.
I do think you got to give the screenwriting credit, because to your point, Ian, when the doctor was talking about a friend, I mean that it could be classic, just pointing off of him,
right?
Pointing the suspect vision or whatever, that it's not him, where, oh yeah, I had a quote unquote friend that had a diving accident and blah, blah, blah. So it's a perfect way to get the audience to going, oh, it's somebody else. Because if it had been the doctor, which at one point we do think it is, that's a brilliant plot line there. How they trigger the audience to go, shit, I'm going this way.
Yep.
So that was really well done.
And also Dick Maas,
Dick
Maas, screenwriter.
It was very well done. And I got to say, man, I was deflated, because when along with, I'm sure the other audience members, when they first watched this, when the killer is actually Martin, I was like, oh, really? I mean, I kind of pegged that from the first time we saw this guy. He's going to be the killer, but he's not. And just it's not just that maybe there's two killers. He was working with someone. No, he had no connection to this. It turns out he was a good guy. He was just, a shrink who was in love with someone that, definitely violates the professional ethic, I guess. But he was just kind of a dude who was
another parallel
lost out to Cobretti. Sorry, go ahead.
Another parallel to New York Ripper is because New York Ripper has a very sad ending too. It's just kind of deflating, because it's that's why he was doing it. This is kind of the same way, where it's and there's a lot of quirkiness in New York Ripper too. So I feel like they both share a spiritual kind of connection or whatever.
They don't share the same awesome pop song at the end, though.
Yeah. No.
Well, do you guys think that most audiences are disappointed by the ending? I mean, it's clearly anticlimactic, but it's one of the things I like about it.
Yeah.
I think if it had just gone to credits after they're walking out after having discovered,
I mean, even when the guy kills him, the fact that there isn't some kind of showdown, that we just get this block of exposition about why his friends are doing it and all this stuff, and then they get there and he's killed himself. I mean, it really is kind of anticlimactic. But again, I kind of like that about it.
Yeah, because even if you look at the original Taken of Pelham 1, 2, 3, Robert Shaw's character, spoilers, when he's caught, he kills himself. He doesn't. There's no big action sequence or fight,
no big showdown,
no shootout or anything. He's like, oh well, you guys still believe in capital punishment? No, okay, and then hits the third rail. So I think
it's not.
I don't want to say
it's not preceded. It's not preceded by 8 minutes of like a shrink giving us the explanation as to why
telling you
Robert Shaw
how,
is
yeah,
robbing, you know, holding a train ransom.
Well, I think, you know, Blake, to your point, and I was starting to make a different point, but I think it still stands. But if it ended with, yeah, the guy shot himself through the head and the cops discover, like, yep, okay, I guess he's dead. The mystery is solved. And then it ends. Yeah, that I think would have been disappointing. For me personally, even though it's completely awkward, I love that we cut to that paddle boat scene. It's bright day. Everything's going to be great because it ends on such a record scratch of like, what are we doing here? This movie was very dark and weird and kind of tragic in a lot of places, but it ends on a bright and hopeful note. And I think there are hundreds, probably thousands of movies that you can watch where they figure out who the killer is, they race to his hideout, and the guy's going to end up dead anyway, either shot by the cops or he falls down some shaft and gets impaled on something. Go watch those movies. This movie is not that. The fact that he kills himself is tragic and it humanizes him, and that whole idea of getting revenge against society, it talks about his insanity and desperation. I think it's kind of beautiful in its own way. Now, the paddle boat scene doesn't give us time to absorb that and appreciate it, but you know, again, that's a parking lot conversation.
God, I hope Big Swifty tuned out.
No, he didn't, because he's talking about Pelham 123, amazing film.
We did our best. We did everything we could.
Big Swifty, if you're listening, I hope you enjoy the film just the same.
Yeah, I hope you watch it right now.
Yes, and I'm going to let everybody go because we are a little bit over our hour. Not to sound like Martin the Shrink, but I will say the only leeway I'll give this movie is to not being a giallo, because it completely is. Yeah, manifest. No J&B, no Scotch in this movie.
Nope.
Unless I missed it.
It's just not in the bottle.
Yeah,
that doesn't count.
Pours it out of his decanter. And
it would have been awesome if he was underwater with the bottle of J&B.
Does J&B even work outside the bottle? Like, are you allowed to pour it into a decanter?
I don't think it exists. I think they just sell these empty cool-looking bottles.
Yeah.
No. One last thing. Because we didn't really talk about it, but the fight under the water in the boat, that was exciting and scary, and it's kind of a slow motion. I mean, we've seen a zombie wrestle a shark. Yeah. I think that's tied for 1 or 2 in terms of like amazing underwater things that I've seen in genre films. So Blue Underground, this is not a plug. It's just I happened to see this because immediately after watching this movie, I'm like, I have to own this. Is it on physical media? It turns out Blue Underground is, I guess, putting out a Blu-ray of this next month, so I pre-ordered it. But then in the pre-show, talking to y'all, you're like, oh, how many iterations of this has Blue Underground put out? So I don't know if there's anything new or if it's just new cover art.
I'm sure it's like a 4K version. Like
it's
ultra
probably
high
an upgrade
definition.
It's also streaming on Shudder right now for anybody who's watching and wants to.
It's on Shudder. It's on
Tubi?
Prime. I think it's on Tubi. Like you can watch this everywhere.
Yeah. So I would definitely do that. I would recommend just buying it sight unseen, because I'm sure there's extras on there that are amazing, and you will not be disappointed. It's my personal guarantee, not really, that if you watch this movie, you buy it and you watch it and you hate it, I will give you a refund. Again, I'm just kidding.
And I can't wait to discuss Amsterdam 2 next year.
Yep.
when it comes out.
Oh, I'm gonna fly all of us out to Amsterdam again for the premiere, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna get Dick Maas on the show.
Nice.
It's gonna be amazing.
Wow. You're I love this level of lying, Ian. This is great.
It's not lying. He's committing.
If I were a multimillionaire, these would not be lies, but unfortunately, I got kids to put through college. Anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out and talking.
I'm so glad you like this, Ian. I just gotta say that. Yeah. Like, I'm really
and
really
you
glad.
discussing this, like you're so cheesy about this movie. It really shows that you love this thing.
I can't I could not be prepared in any way for what this movie was. It's just. In the future, well, maybe I don't. Maybe I do want to be surprised, but my inclination is if we're going to watch an Amsterdam level movie in the future, you got to give me some kind of heads up, like just brace yourself. But Swifty says, great episode as usual. Thank you very much, Swifty.
Oh, nice.
And thank you all who've been hanging out and watching us discuss this movie. If you haven't checked it out, please go find Amsterdam and watch it and appreciate it. Please give some love to all of my fellow.
It's not a Giallo.
Give some love to most of my fellow academicians here on the show, on the panel. But all their information can be found down below, including, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this great roundtable involving the Hammer Frankenstein films that I was gracious enough, or AC was gracious enough to invite me on to participate in. Went up recently. It is Peter Cushing's birthday, so reanimate a corpse in his honor, maybe, or blow up a planet. Do neither of those things. I'm just kidding. And this has been Accademia Giallo for Amsterdamned. Until next time, whenever that is. Oh, Brian,
one quick little thing, because like I feel like I love this show and I would want to announce it in this sort of platform or whatever, but I might be pulling the plug on the Giallo room, so I'm just throwing that out there for discussion.
Oh, way to end on a downer. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, it's like a cliffhanger.
So Dick Maas of you.
Yeah.
Well, what the hell, man? It was coming back, and now it's the plug
I know,
like,
but life happens, and
That's true. That's true. Well, you always have a place here on Accademia Giallo. So wherever your Giallo journey takes you, we're here to support you.
Yep.
Nice.
All right. Well, thanks you, everybody. Thanks you. Anyway, hold on a second. We got some last minute indignation. Why?
Oh no, this is
see 2 hours later.
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, gang, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time, whenever that is, whatever that is. Thanks very much. Take care, and per Swifty, we need the Baron. Yes, we do. But yes, as life has a way of getting in the way of other things, but it's more important. Some things are more important than Giallo. I did not just say that on the live stream, which I'm ending right now.